Today is October 29. Now, in 1940, as I'm sure you know, the world had descended into war, World War II. Germany had invaded Poland the previous year. Japan was well on its way to conquering a pretty good chunk of Asia and the Pacific. Now, the United States was officially neutral at this time. But President Franklin Roosevelt saw the winds of war heading our way, so he and Congress passed the Selective Service Act in September. And then on October 29, 1940, Secretary of War Henry Stimson drew the first number 158, and the first peacetime draft in all of American history was underway. Now, it's tempting to remember World War II as a rah-rah patriotic moment in our country's history, but for many of the men who were drafted, it was anything but. See, some were afraid of the trauma of war, some were pacifists, didn't want to go to war, some had never actually been away from home and feared what regimented life would be like. Some just didn't appreciate the inconvenience. I got stuff to do, you know. And some just didn't want to be told what to do. Yeah? You know, sometime get on YouTube and check out the song This Is the Army, Mr. Jones, from the 1943 movie This Is the Army. And it's cutesy, it's kind of cheesy, but the statement in that song is true. Not everybody who was drafted wanted to be in the military. Have you ever had to do something you didn't really want to do? I know you have, right? If you're honest. I remember several years ago my department chairman coming to me and telling me, hey, so next semester, guess what? You're teaching California history. Now, I had absolutely no formal training in California history, and I hadn't done anything with it since I had been in 4th grade, which is close to 30 years before, so I felt woefully inadequate, and I didn't want to teach the class. So I moaned, I complained, and then, of course, I taught the class. And I ended up loving it, right? I was actually pretty good at it. And now, 10 some odd years later, it's one of my favorite classes to teach. Who knew? Have you ever felt like God was calling you to do something? Have you ever felt that you were being drafted by God, maybe? You know, Moses was drafted, if you will, in a pretty peculiar way. Now, Moses is hanging out on a mountainside, he's shepherding, and God speaks to him through a burning bush. God tells Moses, hey, I've chosen you, I want you to lead my people, the children of Israel, out of slavery into the promised land. And Moses' response? Like good leaders, they got to be able to speak well. I don't really speak well. I don't do that. You can read the rest of Moses' response in Exodus 4, where he basically says this. He says, Lord, please send anybody else, just not me. Please, come on, really? Something similar happened to the prophet Jeremiah. Now, God called him and said, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Now, Jeremiah had basically the same response as Moses. He said, I can't speak well, I'm not good at this. Oh, and by the way, I'm too young, right? No. Now, God normally doesn't take no for an answer, FYI, okay? And so God says this, don't say, I'm too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you to. two men who were drafted and did God's will very well, albeit reluctantly. But then there was Isaiah. It's the year 740 BC, and in that year, the prophet Isaiah had a vision of God himself. Now, the world in 740 BC was a pretty scary place. God's people are caught between the vicious Assyrians and the sea, and God's people had to pay heavy taxes to these people or face certain destruction. The world looked dark, bleak, icky, we might say. And this is the moment that God calls Isaiah. But unlike Moses and Jeremiah, God just asks this general question. He just kind of throws it out there. God says, I have a message to give to my people. I have a message to give to my people. Whom shall I send? And immediately Isaiah cries out like a 6-year-old, here am I, send me. Or in modern parlance, ooh, pick me. Oh man, enthusiastic, joyful. Isaiah cannot wait. And I'll be honest, a lot of the time I feel like Jeremiah and Moses. Aw, come on, man. Not me. Pick somebody else, will ya? But I really want to be like Isaiah. You know, when President Roosevelt gave a speech on the draft on October 29, 1940, he reminded his listeners that the draftees, and I quote, fully understand the necessity for national defense and are ready to play their part in it. They know simply that ours is a great country, great in perpetual devotion to the cause of liberty and justice, great in faith that always there can be and must be a will to a better future. Yeah, you can know and you can feel, but do you have to be pressed into service before you will act on that knowledge? So may all of us respond to the call that God gives us. Whatever role he wants us in, let us all be like Isaiah and rush to be the first in line. Let us reply with enthusiasm and joy. Ooh, me. Ready to play our part in a better future. A better future here on earth and in God's future kingdom.